Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of Two Cooks Talking. I am one of your hosts, Nguyen. I am not an expert on cooking, but I am pretty good about food and taking that all down. With me, as usual, is my co host, executive chef, Michael Weller, who is an expert on cooking.
Well, I at least like food a whole bunch.
And this week's episode, we wanted to touch about pretty much a topic that came up on Facebook from some family members of ours regarding pantry items that often go unused. They show up in a recipe, and you use it once, and you just it sits there in the pantry until the end of time.
Until forever.
Yeah.
Yes. And we talked a little bit about this when we talked about spices. I mean, one of the challenges is you're really excited about doing a recipe and it calls for a quarter teaspoon of ground cloves. Well, they don't sell quarter teaspoons. They just don't. So sometimes it's an item like that. So one of the things that came up from a family member was curry powder, and they purchased curry powder and they don't know how to use it now.
Yeah.
So
Well, about curry powder, what typically goes in a curry powder? Because there's not a curry plant. It's you know in your head, but usually like an amalgam of seasonings, is that right?
yeah, there's a couple things.
Yeah.
One, there is a curry plant.
Oh, okay.
It's one of my favorite plants in the whole world.
Oh.
And you use the curry leaf like you would use a bay leaf. It's one of my favorite flavors in the whole world. But it doesn't grow well. I've spent literally hundreds of dollars trying to get a curry plant going in my yard and failed utterly. They're available frozen. It's a beautiful, wonderful flavor found a lot in Southern Indian cuisine. And then comes the problem. The problem comes back to the fact that the British had India as a colony.
Right.
And there is no curry powder in India. There's no curry powder in Indonesia. There's no curry powder in Japan. It was something the British did to kind of simulate what Indian chefs were doing.
Okay.
So in India, oftentimes there's a whole bunch of beautiful little stainless steel containers of spices, and the mix is made per recipe, and it's a different proportion and ratio according to what you're cooking. It gets a little hard. And not to bash, I'm on the British, but probably didn't enter the colonial period with the greatest reputation as cooks.
No.
To their credit, they adopted curry in a big way, and
Yeah.
curry's now the national dish of Great Britain. But what they ended up taking back was an approximation of many of the flavors. And so you get curry powder as an approximation of what happened in a lot of Indian dishes.
Okay. So what goes into a curry powder?
Love. Typically, there's a base of turmeric,
Okay.
which is an earthy yellow ground spice. It's a root, actually. Fresh turmeric is a wonderful ingredient, but dried turmeric is ground. It's what makes curry yellow.
Okay.
It's what makes various different denominations of different faiths robes yellow. It's a dye, and it works really well. It will dye your hands yellow if you're not careful with it. Kind of earthy, deep, kind of earthy flavor is probably a good description. And then from there's a lot of variations on what goes into a curry powder. There's almost always an element of heat. There are aromatic elements. Cardamom is common. Coriander, the seed of the cilantro plant, coriander, cumin, and just a range of dry spices go into what is a curry mix.
Okay. All right. And so you've got a little bottle of curry powder you got from Safeway or wherever.
Right.
All right. It's sitting there on the shelf. What are you going to do with curry powder?
Always and always, whenever you use curry powder, you've got to light it. You've got to ignite it. All of these spices have, even the dried ones sitting on your shelf for too long, have volatile oils in them. They give the aroma and the flavor that you're looking for. If you sprinkle curry over the top of something cold, it's got a very subtle flavor. It doesn't really spark or light up. You've got to cook with it. So
Okay.
anytime you're using a curry powder, saute it with some onions, saute it with some onions and ginger, um, and then the flavors kind of blow up. They expand,
Hmm.
and they reach their full potential.
Sure.
And I like, if you're tired of a tuna fish sandwich, make a curried tuna fish sandwich. Um,
And by that you mean like a tuna salad sandwich?
like a
Just
tuna salad
just
sandwich,
add a
but
little curry powder.
saute a little celery and a little onion
Mm,
and add curry powder to it. And as it's hot, let it cool down, mix in some mayo,
that sounds good.
toss in a can of tuna, and you've got a tuna sandwich that people will fight for in the office. So
Yeah, I know. Personally, one of the things I like to do with curry powder is adding it to a little bit of rice and just having a curried rice. It's really great. Throw a fried egg on it. They can't really beat that.
I had I had rice with fried egg on it for breakfast this morning. I skipped the curry powder, but yeah, it's a wonderful start,
Yeah,
and I can't imagine not using up a curry powder.
yeah,
Curry powder is going to go away.
yeah. And I think with a lot of people, they have expectations of curry to be uh, like they tend to have a lot of heat, but curry powder really doesn't have that. It just has that little bit of something there, but it's not really like a kick in the mouth, right?
No,
Yeah.
spicy. There's plenty of spice in Indian cuisine,
Mhm.
without a doubt, but curry powder isn't the source of it,
Right.
right? And that's not the dish. Also, there's a really interesting thing that happens with Indian food. It's silly to talk about Indian food. It's such a huge cuisine with so many cultures involved that
Yeah.
it changes so much. But I have found that spice tolerance is much greater in Indian cuisine, right? You can eat. I have friends who are very anti-pepper. They
Mm.
can't handle spicy food at all, but they'll eat Indian food.
Hmm.
And it's something to do maybe with the yogurt, maybe with the combination of aromatics and all of the other things going on in Indian cuisine. But people tend to tolerate more chili heat in Indian cuisine than they would in, say, Tex-Mex.
And it could be kind of going back to our cooking mistakes episode. A lot of times you add a little bit of sweetness. The yogurt helps. Whenever I have like a tikka masala, it has like a little nice sweetness to it that I like.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I'm a fan of curry powder. I'm a fan of curries in general. So, um, another item that came up was I keep on forgetting which one it is, but it's dehydrated milk powder
Milk powder,
as
yes.
opposed to evaporated milk, which comes in a can typically.
Right.
Dehydrated milk powder comes in a box, right?
Right, because a box is an envelope.
Yeah.
And it's associated with culturally in the United States with poverty, right?
Hmm.
When the government hands out supplies to people in need, oftentimes disaster relief and aid to people who need food takes the form of this dehydrated milk because you just add water and you get
Right.
milk.
And going on that, when I used to visit Vietnam, Vietnam's a third world country. We didn't have fresh milk in the refrigerator. We had dehydrated milk that we would replenish and stick in the fridge.
Exactly. And for that matter, in many third world countries, refrigeration is an issue, right?
Yeah.
So sending fresh milk to a disaster area isn't that much help,
Right.
right? But a packet that you can just add water to, that but as an ingredient, it's better than that,
Hmm.
right? It's got a bad rap because of its association with disaster relief food, right? Nobody eats government cheese on purpose,
Right.
right? Um, but it's a secret ingredient in a lot of different recipes.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this, but it sounds like we talked a little bit. You mentioned it on Facebook a little bit. I think other people mentioned it's usually an ingredient in baking dishes, but it goes beyond that.
Yeah, so um, I'm biased, but my wife makes the best cornbread in the world. And one of the reasons I think that her cornbread is so fabulous is
Yeah.
she uses powdered milk.
Hmm.
And it adds to the softness and the fluffiness. Uh, Dehydrated milk does not get in the way of gluten development, so you tend to get a fluffier, lighter product with it. The big secret is, and there are Austrian chefs who will kill me for letting this out of the bag, but it's the secret ingredient in a lot of the best sausages in the world. Dehydrated milk will hold or help hold ground meats together so they don't crumble but stay intact.
Do you know why? Is it because there's a little bit of fat content in the milk that helps bind, or?
It works with another interesting thing about
Hmm.
another reason why dehydrated milk is a bad rap is more often than not dehydrated milk is dehydrated non-fat milk.
Oh, really?
So not only do you get powdered milk, but you get powdered milk with none of the fat.
Yeah.
So no wonder people don't like this, right?
Yeah.
If I've got to add cold water to it and mix it up in a cup, I'm not going to love it. But as a secret ingredient, it's fabulous. And no, it's I can't break it down to the food science level,
Yeah.
but I will tell you that it works if you're making hamburger patties. If you mix a little bit of dehydrated milk into a hamburger patty, it will hold together without you having to pack it. So you
Interesting.
don't have to squeeze it tight in order to hold it together on the grill. In the same way, it helps to keep a sausage emulsified.
And it doesn't really have a impact on the flavor?
No,
Negligible? Yeah.
non-fat milk, baby.
Yeah.
It's white water.
Yeah.
So, no, it's not going to impact the flavor profile, and it's a nice secret ingredient, right? So if you go through, one of my favorite things to flip through are collections of recipes from like the Ladies Auxiliary or the Quilters Club. You know, the little collection of everybody submits a couple recipes.
Right.
I love flipping through them because you'll find things like, why on earth are they using dehydrated milk in this recipe? But it works,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of knowledge to be had. Some of the best cooks in the world are people who cook for large families, and they cook 3 meals a day for 10 people. Our Gosh, my mother-in-law, and it gets complicated for you. I guess it's your
My, well, my grandmother-in-law, right? Yeah.
grandmother-in-law, right? She cooked for 10 people, 10,
Yeah.
11 people, 3 meals a day. I don't know. She's probably cooked for more people than I have in my career because I get
Yeah.
a couple thousands. I cook for 2,000 people occasionally.
Yeah. But
But
this
you
is
start knocking
nightly.
down 30 meals a day for 300 days a year, you get big numbers in a hurry.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wisdom to be found in that cooking. Right?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I guess my mother-in-law, she comes from that family, and so she would I guess she was used to cooking for large sizes, and so her family is much smaller, only three children as opposed to the eight children that she grew up with, and so she was used to making big meals and then it totally changed the dynamic for small people, small families. But that's beside the point. um, Okay, is there anything else you would use dehydrated milk for? I keep on tripping over the words because evaporated and dehydrated sound very similar, but they're very different
And
products.
then throw in condensed just to make the whole thing crazy.
Yeah.
And those are condensed and evaporated are two of the three milks used in tres leches.
Yeah.
But dehydrated isn't.
Yeah.
This is milk powder we're
Right.
talking
Yeah.
about in this podcast
Yeah.
here. Horseradish was mentioned.
I love horseradish. It's one of my favorite things.
So horseradish is, again, going back to our discussion on heat. Horseradish is like mustard or wasabi.
Right. Where it's acidic heat rather than.
It's gaseous.
Oh, yeah.
So a chili pepper has capsaicin, which is an oil that coats and
Yeah.
lasts, and it stays on your palate sometimes far too long. Horseradish is a gas. It comes up through your palate, sneaks into your nasal passages, and punches in your nose from the inside, right?
Right. Which
And then it's gone.
yeah.
5 seconds after you eat a big spoonful of horseradish, you're done crying,
Yeah.
and it's okay again.
Yeah, and a lot of people I know a lot of people who don't eat much sushi are afraid of wasabi because they hear how quote unquote spicy it is, but it's not spicy in the sense of that like you said, the chili hot. It's not burning and you're like wanting water. Like with wasabi, it's like a quick little sizzle and it clears your nasal passages and I think because you're able to get that much more, I don't know, maybe because you get more oxygen in because you're getting wider nasal passages, but I think it makes flavors awesome. Yeah,
Interesting, in the United States, it's usually not actually wasabi.
and it's horseradish.
It's a mustard and horseradish
Yeah,
blend with some green coloring in it.
right.
But even fresh horseradish is the same way. The pungency is one that hits you in the nasal passages. One of the two little tales from the kitchen kind of thing. One of the classic hazing rituals in a kitchen is to mix up wasabi and tell the new guy it's guacamole. It's a classic. You get a rookie who obviously hasn't been around a lot of different kinds of food, and you hand him a spoonful, and it's part of becoming a cook.
And when I was a child, my brother did that to me at a sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't like guacamole, I still did it. Yeah, young and gullible. So,
Part of my experience, there was a time in a wonderful, glorious time in my career where I was a line cook for many years, and there's a refinement, an upper echelon to a line cook, which I call a line dog, right? Gender neutral term. A line dog is somebody who lives and breathes for being slammed on a Friday night with tickets everywhere. One of the classic line dog bonding rituals is I would look at my partner on the line and we'd each grab a big fat tablespoon of wasabi and we would look at each other and eat it and just stare at each other as the whole thing came and went.
yeah.
Tales from the kitchen, what can I say? Those days are gone, but they were good days at the time. So wasabi is wonderful. Horseradish is incredible.
Yeah, I think horseradish and horseradish and meat is just like a great combination for me. Is more specifically horseradish sauce, which I don't know what goes into horseradish sauce. I don't know if it's just like mayonnaise and horseradish, but I love horseradish sauce. But raw horseradish is great too. I love this stuff.
So a fresh horseradish root is amazing, but nobody ever has a problem with that, right? You buy it, you use it, it stays in your fridge until it dries up and shrivels into a nasty little thing that you throw away, right? The thing that hangs out forever and ever and ever, and you'll probably find 2 or 3 jars on my refrigerator door, is the prepared horseradish, right? Which is horseradish and vinegar, just to really pick up the potency of it. And I think if you don't know what to do with leftover horseradish, you should buy some vodka and tomato juice and just wake up better on the weekends. Horseradish and a Bloody Mary is it's
Yeah, I wasn't sure where you're going with that, but
yeah, Bloody Mary's a wonderful beverage use for horseradish.
I've never had it with horseradish. I'm typically the Tabasco or the other ingredients, but never or Worcestershire sauce. But yeah, not with horseradish. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a classic ingredient there, mixed with the British horseradish cream is heavy whipping cream and salt and horseradish and typically a little bit of lime juice whipped up, and it looks like whipped cream. And serving a pile of that on a slice of prime rib.
Yeah,
that's just life.
Yeah, I was just saying, horseradish and meat is great. Putting it on a sandwich is great.
So it does. If you're making a roast beef sandwich, if you're making a meatloaf sandwich, a little horseradish and mayonnaise mixed together, there you go. You're happy all over. We talked about how much we love butter and steak. Horseradish butter works.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with a little horseradish butter over the top of a steak. Yeah, all good.
Yeah, it's a fantastic ingredient, and even thinking about things that seem a little unusual. Like one of my favorite things, I used to go to Quiznos a lot back when Quiznos was still a thing. Now there's like one near me, like 10 miles away. But they have a chicken carbonara sandwich, and putting a little horseradish on that was always just, it was amazing to me.
It picks up flavors. It lifts flavors off your palate. Most of what we experience as flavor is actually aroma. And any of the mustards, horseradish, wasabis lift the flavor off your palate and help expand it into your whole sensory organ. So it expands it into the nasal passages, and you just experience food more deeply and more fully.
And just hearing about the implementations of horseradish, I kind of sense a little bit of theme with things that horseradish particularly go well with, and usually it's either an acidic component or some sort of fat component.
It cuts the fat, and acids intensify the impact.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think when you have dishes that have that, maybe a little horseradish could be great place to add that in.
It's a nice place to experiment.
Yeah.
Right? And again, restraint.
Yeah, horseradish is powerful stuff.
You you can kill people with horseradish,
Yeah.
right? My mustard gas was a weapon.
Yeah.
I mean, so you have to be careful. But I think having said that, I'm laughing. We have a friend who doesn't like chilies and doesn't like horseradish and doesn't like vinegar and telling out loud saying that mustard and horseradish were weapons would be another little bullet in her armor.
Okay. What else? Those were the main three ones that popped up on Facebook. You have a large pantry with a fridge full of stuff, several fridges full of stuff. What are in the
A
recesses
fridge, a freezer, a refrigerator, a pantry in the kitchen, 3 cupboards in the garage. Yeah, I've got stuff in the back of.
What's something in the recesses of your cupboards? You talked about clothes a little bit ago. Where do you use clothes?
I love cloves.
Yeah.
But you're never going to use a lot.
Right.
So the quick answer is don't buy ground cloves. I buy whole cloves and grind them when I need them. That extends the shelf life. So I'm still not going to go through a whole jar of cloves. I'm really not going to. You can use it a couple different ways. Classically in French cooking, you use a clove to stick a bay leaf into an onion and use that as a flavoring ingredient. So making like a cream sauce, you would throw in an onion, bay leaf, clove combination for the aromatics. The holiday ham with the cloves stuck in every one of the little diamond triangles you score into the fat of the ham. I love cloves at this time of year in mulled cider or mulled red wine, spiced red wine or spiced cider.
Yeah.
Clove and cinnamon, just an amazing combination.
I know in my pantry, we talked a little bit about it within the curry powder, but specifically, I have a jar of turmeric on my shelf that I don't really touch.
Yeah.
I picked it up once because good old AB Alton Brown, he mentioned a list of must-have ingredients, pantry ingredients that people should have that aren't the typical, salt, pepper, and specific chilies. He mentioned turmeric as one of his favorite things. So I bought one, and I was like, if AB likes turmeric, I'm gonna get some turmeric. And I'm like, I every time I pick it up, I open it up, I smell it, and I'm like, oh, this is strong stuff, and I have no idea what I'm gonna do with it. What am I gonna do with this jar of turmeric?
So I'm almost done with my jar. and one of the places I use it, I cook for my son's band all the time. I'm cooking for a couple hundred, 150 people, and making macaroni and cheese. One of the things you have to fight when you're making macaroni and cheese is everybody's deep childhood memory of the blue box.
Macaroni.
Yeah, the and that's always yellow. And typically it's yellow with annatto seeds, the same thing that turns cheddar cheese yellow-orange color, or food dyes. And the horror of it is that if you're making macaroni and cheese for someone who grew up on the packaged macaroni and cheese, no matter how good it tastes, it will never taste right unless it's the right color. A little shake of turmeric will help you out right there.
Really?
Yep, I do it every time. I laugh every time. I think and it works.
Yeah.
It is a powerful food coloring. It's a clothes dye as much as anything else.
Yeah.
But as an ingredient, it's kind of subtle in its impact. So I shake it into curries when I make my own curry spice blends.
Oh, pro tip, he makes his own curry spice blends, people.
Yeah, we'll even talk about that because as much as you might enjoy ground cumin and you like the flavor of ground cumin until the first day that you take whole cumin seeds and toast them in a dry saute pan and then grind them in a spice grinder and experience that and the difference between the two and how much more impactful and amazing freshly ground cumin seed is. It's 10 times that impact with a freshly made curry spice blend. Toasting all those spices yourself, your whole kitchen smells like some alchemical workshop. Right? You're a mad scientist putting together a curry blend. And that might even be a place for a couple of those cloves that you get rid of too.
Okay. But for turmeric, so you put that in your curry powders. Um,
Cheat macaroni and cheese
yeah,
with it. Yeah, and like I said, I'm just about done with my jar.
yeah.
I guess you get two per lifetime.
Okay. Well, we're about 25 minutes. I think that does it for this episode.
Okay, but send in
Yeah,
that back of the cabinet, back of the pantry questions,
yeah.
and we'll talk about it.
And that goes with anything. If there's anything that you want to go over in particular, just let us know and we'll talk about it. We're always having fun. Sometimes we just show up and I've got like maybe three or four ideas in the back of my mind. Mike has like two or three far back in his mind, and we just talk. So if we want to be a podcast for the fans, so let us know what you want us to talk about, and we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about food all day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been episode 10 of Two Cooks Talking. I've been Long Nguyen.
Mike Weller.
And you can subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes. You can like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/2cookstalking. That's with the number 2. You can email us at twocookstalking@gmail.com. You can listen to previous episodes at twocookstalking.podbean.com. And I think that does it for all the plugs. So until next time, we'll talk to you later.